Hello and welcome to Netflix Professor Cinema, the podcast that goes to the cinema every week, sees a couple of things, stays at home, sees a couple of things, rates them all out of 5, and sees where money has been better spent this week, should we have bothered leaving our houses. My name is Tosin and I am the host, based up in a place called Brimstone in the middle of the United Kingdom near Birmingham, the second city. And joining me as always is Shaun Harris on the mainland in Bournemouth this time. Yes, Shaun Harris, our regular... Yeah, a regular, why would you do that, correspondent?
A regular, why would you do that, man? Yeah.
Yeah, why would you do that? If Shaun had a podcast about films, it probably would be called Why Would You Do That? Well, about stupid films anyway. And joining us from London, it is our London correspondent, Holly Neslane. Hello. How are we all doing?
Good.
Yes, warm. And joining us at some point, crashing in at some point, like she did on, I think, our last recorded podcast, will be Sharon from the Isle of Wight. But let us first of all kick off with what it is we have seen in the cinema this week. So, Shaun, you far away. What have you seen in the cinema this week?
So, I went to see 28 Years Later and F1.
Ooh.
So that's my cinema excursions.
Yes, okay, cool. And Holly?
Exactly the same.
Yeah, F1, or to give it its full proper title, F1, the movie.
Unless there was any uncertainty and we thought that Brad Pitt had suddenly become a real F1 driver.
Yeah, I know. But I think it tells you, okay, we'll get to the review of that later, but that feeds a little bit into my skepticism about this film, because the thing about it is that you can see it has the F1 logo, it has F1 drivers, so you can see it has the full corporation of F1 in it. So as far as they're concerned, this is probably just like a big massive marketing exercise for F1. And the last time, I remember FIFA commissioned a film once that had Tim Roth as Sepp Blatter, and So yeah, but we'll see. All right, cool. And I in cinemas, I saw 28 Years Later, and I saw Elio, the new Pixar movie. So that brings us up to 3 films this week. And how about at home? What have we seen at home?
Okay, well I've watched a sort of bits of old stuff. I did watch Mad Max 2, the Mel Gibson one, The Road Warrior.
Oh yeah.
Still holds up really, really well. I really enjoyed that. But stuff I hadn't seen, I saw on Amazon. I saw a Western called Brimstone.
Oh yeah.
2016 Guy Pearce Western. And just watched a thing called The Stockholm Bloodbath.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Brimstone and Stockholm, but so those are up for consideration. And if you're listening to this for the first time and wondering what Shaun said about something he's seen before, part of our rule here is that if you're going to talk about something in the streaming world, it can't be something you have seen before, because if not, you could just pick your favorite film of all time, mine would be The Blues Brothers, and go, I watched that this week. It was 5 stars. So it has to be something that we have not seen before. Holly, what about you? What have you seen at home?
I have seen, let me check what I have seen, because I have told you already. I have seen The Last Anniversary and We Were Liars.
Oh, you are, let's just say that there's a type. There's a type there. You have thrown yourself into sort of like literary adaptations, which may or may not be young adult or not. Yeah, I prefer saying young adult to saying YA, because when you say YA, after a while, it just sounds like you're trying to do a bad impression of someone from Newcastle.
Yes, that's a fair point.
Yeah, it's a YA. All right, cool. And Shaun, okay, you already saw what you saw. You saw Brimstone on the Stockholm Bloodbath, and I at home saw The Last Anniversary on your bidding, Holly. I went to watch The Last Anniversary, and I also saw a German movie called I'm Your Man. All right, and Sharon is crashing in.
Sharon is crashing in. Cool, that's good. That's what we like.
We
like Sharon crashing.
Sharon crashing in as we predicted. Okay, Sharon, we're at that point where we're saying, what have we seen? What have you seen at home?
At home, I have seen a French film, a comedy called Loup-Garous, or The Family Pack.
Okay, just in case you didn't hear it in Sharon's voice, comedy was in inverted commas. Okay, so the Family Pack, because I am not sure how I'm going to spell the French thing. I will check that later. Right, okay, and how about in cinemas? What did you see in cinemas in this last?
In cinemas, I have seen 28 Years Later.
28
I did manage the triple.
Oh, you managed the days, the weeks, then the years.
All in the same week, yeah.
Ooh.
I did the Monday, Tuesday, Friday.
Do you think they'll ever make a decades? 28 decades?
Yes, I know, the middle one.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. In that case, let us kick off with 28 years later. The big thing we've all seen, whatever you want to call it, legacy sequel or whatever. I think that's the term that they use for it nowadays. So, seeing as we've all done this, I'm going to give us a timer. 15 minutes should be enough for us to rant, but let's start off with a little bit of what this film's about. So, 28 days later, people might remember this. This was released in, God knows, I cannot remember. It would have been
2002.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. 2002. It was released in 2002. It was famous. It was directed by Danny Boyle, written by Alex Garland. It was famous for having shots of Cillian Murphy, who nobody knew. That was pretty much the first thing that Cillian Murphy had done, like the most high-profile thing he'd done up to that point. His first leading role, I think. Walking through a deserted London, and everybody was going, how the heck did they do that? It also introduced the world to Naomi Harris, all that kind of stuff. And there was a 28 weeks later, as Sharon has mentioned, there was 28 weeks later that was made a couple of years ago, after that didn't have their involvement in it, and now they've come back to it with 28 years later. And the whole idea is that this is not a zombie horde, it's not a zombie apocalypse, it's just very similar to a zombie apocalypse with these things called the infected, because it comes out of a lab when they tried something on monkeys, and then it gets into the blood and it makes people into these rage-afflicted beings. And by this time, there's 28 years into the whole thing. You are introduced to a conclave or a group, a hamlet called who live in something called Holy Island, which is an island off the coast of somewhere in Newcastle.
Lindisfarne.
What's that?
The Isle of Lindisfarne.
Oh, Lindisfarne. Okay, cool. And when it comes to the geography of the UK, I will always take your word for it, Sharon. and so they live on this thing, and it's only accessible through like what's the word? Like a pathway, a causeway. Yeah, when the tide is low, and that's how they sort of keep themselves safe. But every now and then they go out onto the mainland to get supplies or everything like that. And then there's almost this rite of passage that you see. You meet this kid who's called Spike, and he goes on a rite of passage with his dad, who's played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, to the mainland. And it's like, you're going to go kill your first infected. You're going to go figure out how to survive out in the wild and all that kind of stuff. And that is generally how the film starts. And then that's the basic thing of it. So as you can imagine, he goes onto the line. They go into the mainland. Stuff doesn't exactly go according to plan, and things go on. And I don't want to say much more because I mean it's 28 years later. You know what you're coming for. I just want to jump straight into what did you guys think about this? What did you guys think about it? I'm going to start with Sharon. Sharon,
2 points just to start off with.
Yeah.
The 28 years later is 28 years on from the first film, and so
Yes.
it's not our timeline, it's the timeline from 2002.
Yeah.
Because some of the characters you see, some of the events you see are 28 years on from 2002. And obviously, because it's not zombieism, it's not The Walking Dead.
No.
It's a virus, and viruses mutate.
Yeah.
And so we saw that in 28 weeks later, which is like the link between the films.
Yeah.
Because the virus, you start to see the mutations appear in 28 weeks later. So obviously by 28 years later, the virus has mutated and mutated again and mutated again. So what we're seeing is not the same virus as we saw in the first film because it has mutated. Because it was largely died out, and then the mutation sort of sparked it off again after 28 weeks later. So you see all these different mutations.
Yeah, I think it's quite funny the way they kind of do the thing. You know how like when they released the Halloween movies, the new Halloween movies a couple of years ago, and they kind of went, everything after the first Halloween is rubbish. And they don't quite do this. They do acknowledge the fact that the events of 28 weeks later happen. But there's almost kind of like a hand wave that go, yeah, that was supposed to, but no. Now we're getting back to what we're interested in. This is a British story set on the British Isles. We're going to stay within this thing. It affects us and nobody else.
The whole thing about the first one was like, they're just going to starve to death.
Yeah.
And yet they largely did starve to death. And then 28 weeks later happened, and that made the virus evolve. And so the infected that we saw originally.
Okay.
That are consumed by red. But yeah, apart from that, that was my comments I wanted to raise in the get-go.
Yep.
And I know there are a few things that Shawnee is dying to say, so I'm going to let Shawnee go.
324, I think. My last
I'm just like I can feel that, how you got that when your dog is really biting it, like another dog.
No, I'm fine. I'm just listening to everybody.
But Shaun, we know you're ready. We know you're ready. You're coiled.
So it's like I don't know Shawnee.
Okay, so Shaun,
go for it. You have a blessing.
Shaun, go for it. What did you think of this film?
Well, yeah. So the first half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, yeah, that's okay. We could go with that. I quite liked it, and I did even quite like the shots between the old Henry V stuff and all that. I quite liked it.
Yeah, the way the film is the way the film is made is quite weird sometimes because they keep having this cuts between World War II footage and like Henry the Laurence Olivier version that he made film. And they keep cutting between that and now, and I was never entirely sure.
And from 28 weeks later, they've cut in as well.
Yeah.
And I was never sure exactly what kind of parallel they were trying to make there, but I was like, okay, that's interesting. I don't exactly know what that is, but yeah. But anyway, Shaun, carry on.
I was cool with that personally, and the rest of the stuff. Yeah, I could understand what's going on in the community, but I don't think that certain people that went off would have survived for a start. I don't think they would have had enough I had enough knowledge and everything else to last.
I had an issue with that as well. Yes,
I just don't think they would have managed to do what they did. And
then
I
had an issue with that.
They meet somebody who's obviously been hiding for 28 years and has had no, so he's been 28. He says, "Oh, I haven't seen anybody for 13 years," and then he nearly gets caught for all those years. And I mean, it's just stupid. Why would he put himself in that situation? If he survived, he nearly didn't. Do you know what I mean? So I thought that's just bad. That's just really, really bad. So I had quite a lot of issues with that. I didn't quite like the idea. I wouldn't have thought you'd have had the European powers isolating the place. I just didn't get that. And then there's a bit on the train where you know exactly what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So you know from this movement,
that was telegraphed. That was absolutely telegraphed.
I can see what's going to happen here. I can see what's going to happen here. It wasn't even subtle. Do you know what I mean? So,
I agree with you. It wasn't.
So and I think if you got trained again, I come back to this thing. When trained, and perhaps they weren't that well trained. They might have only been Coast Guard or something. But when you've got trained, professional, military people, they don't panic in situations like that, and they'd handle that situation so much more better. I'm sorry, I just think that.
Well, I think with that, I mean, that particular character you're talking about, they did give a little bit of backstory to him as to why he ended up in the military and everything like that. But I agree because it's kind of like how Sharon is saying. Sharon is saying like, okay, no, but the virus is mutated. I feel like there's this film kept throwing up things that I was like, okay, hang on a second, that's stupid. And then you have to go and get like some other explanation, like a footnote that goes, but if you look at this, that could work. Like, for instance, the one bit I had is there's the bit where they go to an abandoned petrol station. And they go to an abandoned petrol station, and there is something that has to do with igniting gas that I'm like, okay, Alex Garland is quite a meticulous writer, and Danny Boyle's quite a meticulous director. So I'm sure that possibly or theoretically is possible, but I don't understand how they're walking out of there.
No, I felt much the same.
I was like, I mean, they do, and I'm sorry if you haven't watched the film. If you haven't watched the film, we're just probably like sounding like idiots. But like they make a very, very definite choice of showing you where the gas is. They make they make it very clear this is where the gas is. But I'm still kind of like, yeah, but I don't know. And there were just things in this film that just kept going. And I guess you need people to be stupid in films. I guess you need people to be stupid in films for things to happen. But there were just many times I was like, why? Oh, fuck. Like, okay, sure, you're talking about somebody being ill-equipped to go on the journey that they went on, right? You're talking about someone being ill. And there's one particular bit where they're sleeping. There's a bit where they're sleeping. And I'm like, after what happened to you earlier in the film, why are you sleeping on that level? I mean, I don't care how inexperienced you are.
How stupid are you?
Yeah, I don't care how inexperienced you are. You lived through something that told you that what you're doing right now is a dumb ass idea. Yeah. Why are you doing it?
It is because he is the most insufferable character imaginable. And I spent the entire film wishing ill on him.
Well done, Holly. Yeah, no, I can totally see where you're coming from there, mate. Totally.
Yeah.
Everything is just like you are selfish. You are self-involved. This is a decision being made that purely focuses on your needs and your personal preferences and what you think will make your life better.
Yeah.
You give so few expletives about anybody who is not you and your immediate experience of life that, frankly, you should be eaten by a bloody zombie.
I
would clap.
The thing is, I would be okay with that, but I don't think they sketched that out enough. Because it didn't come across as like if they're giving you something that said this is just a totally self-centered character, like okay, Robert Carlyle in the beginning of 28 Weeks Later, I think that they've done a better job of sketching out how self-centered that character is in the short time that he has there than they did with this character, because it just ended up being stupid. It just ended up looking stupid, and the motivation for what kicks off the second half of the film, quite frankly. The motivation, I'm kind of like, that is paper thin. It is really paper thin too. And I understand that you might have been isolated and you don't understand a whole bunch of things and people haven't told you stuff and people have been lying to you your whole life. But it still seems to me very paper thin to go and do this big, massive, stupid thing.
Yeah, it's like you're a very stupid person.
Yeah.
Very stupid person.
That even you yourself
doing it very slowly.
Because up until that point, they haven't shown that character to be stupid. But for the plot to move forward, he has to do something incredibly stupid. Yes. I'm just kind of like, I want to be with you. I want to go along with you, but I'm having serious trouble here. I really can't go along with this. And
should have got eaten by the zombies. Just saying.
Then.
What's Sharon's thoughts?
And the thing about that is also one final thing I will say, because we do have to move on. And before we go to is. Throughout the whole thing, I'm not sure if you guys realized that they were planning to make a trilogy of this film.
Yeah, I didn't until afterwards.
And they've actually filmed and completed the second film, which is called The Bone Temple. So it's going to be all about the Bone Temple, which I think might be quite interesting, because that bit I thought was quite interesting. That bit was quite interesting. Yeah. And but about half of it, I was kind of like, yeah, they're obviously not going to resolve this. It's like, obviously, and I think, but having said that, I do feel as if they did a good job. It wasn't as egregious as some things, where it's like, come back for the sequel. They did a good job of wrapping up a story and then saying, but there's another story to be told. And I'm talking about two things, about the ending of the film and the beginning of the film. The beginning of the film is mad. It is absolutely mad. I mean, I've never seen many films that start off with the Teletubbies, then go places, all that kind of stuff. And then that Teletubby thing is kind of links to the end. But anyway, so Sharon, we'll let you have the final word on this before we go to star ratings.
There's a few the glaring things are obvious. I think we've already mentioned one. I would call one thing the diversion, and I'm thinking, you've potentially obviously endangered everybody in your community.
Exactly.
Exactly.
This is why he should be eaten by zombies.
I was so like,
essentially, to do is like, there are consequences to actions like that, and it's like, are you not even aware of the society in which you live? By your diversion is just potentially killed 500 people. In the next film, I don't know.
Selfish, self-involved child.
Yeah,
that should be eaten.
I was.
Ladies are going.
There was another thing I would call like the time lag, in that there's a scene where people are making their escape, and you've got a zombie like climbing the stairs basically, and you're like 3 steps ahead of it, and then there's like a time jump, and I'm thinking, in my head I was thinking, okay, most houses have like 13 steps. If you're running, how fast does it take you to get from the bottom of the stairs to the top of the stairs, and then how long then does it take you to climb a ladder, open something, close something, and then lie in silence? How long does it take you to do that? And do those two events correspond? So I was thinking, there's a sort of a time lag halfway up the stairs there to allow that to happen. So I think some of those things were a bit too convenient, because it's like, we want to have that cutaway, and it's like, oh,
Yeah, I feel like there's some bits where it's like they're going for something realistic almost. So because there's bits of it that almost sort of like Ken Loachian or something like that. And then at some points they kind of go, oh, we remember we're making a film, and because we're making a film, film logic takes over.
Yeah, I admit there's bits I really like. There's some bits where I'm thinking, okay, about how the virus has evolved. I thought, okay, I can see how some of this could happen. So I was quite pleased with that. But I must admit, the end scene, I think, was a complete, to me, was...
We've got Snow White and the Huntsman with all them dwarfs on springs and things.
Yeah, well, when you get the last bit with, I'm only going to say one word, tracksuits.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I got that last bit, I was a bit like... Because when you first see this, you sort of go, that looks just like...
Yes, yeah.
And I'm thinking, surely they can't all be dressed like that person.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, it's like they are. So in my head, I was like, whoa, I don't know where they're going with that.
Well, I think
for the British audience, that's immediately going to be going bing, 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 bing.
Yeah, to be honest with you, because I didn't grow up here, it didn't immediately occur to me when I saw that bit. I was just kind of like thinking, this is all weird. And it was later on that you were like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. I see what they're doing there. And it only occurred to me later.
In 2002, the things that we knew later did not.
Exactly.
Weren't known.
So within the world,
where are they going with that?
Yeah, within the world of the film, it makes sense. It makes sense, but in the world of the people who have to watch the film, it jars. But okay, how many stars would we give this?
Can I also add that I also was waiting for it to finish for quite a lot of the film. I kind of felt it dragged.
I agree with you. I do think that it dragged. I mean, the second half of the film is definitely slower than the first, and it's like, okay, get on with it. Where are we going? Get on with it. And it's less than 2 hours, and it's a bit. But anyway, how many stars would we give it?
Who's going first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I'll go first.
Yeah, 3.
Shaun?
Yeah, for me, it's a low 3. The first half hour, 3/4 of an hour, but it's a low 3 for me.
Sharon?
I think it's flawed. I mean, my initial assessment was I enjoyed it, actually. They were flawed. Yeah. And I think some of the flaws are quite large ones. But yes. I actually found it, I was engaged with it because I was in that zone. I did the triple that week. So to me, I was in the zone. So my first assessment was a 4. So I'm thinking I may sort of downgrade that to a high 3 because I still think it has an entertainment value. I still think it's got some interesting things to say. And when you look at like post-apocalypse of any type of things, how people envision the future is really interesting to me. It's like what aspects of society do you think we're going to be surviving, and what aspects do you think will just fade away? And I think obviously they're telling you a story about why certain aspects have survived, why they have certain songs, why they have certain images, and it's sort of obviously speaking into a certain demographic. And obviously they're making a judgment on that. But so I thought it made me think, well, that's an interesting thing about what survives. So I thought that was enough to make me overlook and be more generous towards some of the flaws in the film. So I would say, to me, it was a high 3.
I think very similar to you, Sharon. When I finished watching, I thought, that's probably a 4. I didn't enjoy watching it, but it's probably a 4. But I think the more I think about it, I'm coming down to a 3. Because I'm coming down to a 3 because I mean, there were bits where I did not like the tension, I did not like the dread, I don't enjoy being, but I think that's just because the film was effective at doing that. And there were bits where it was really effective at building up the dread, but then something would happen that would be like, hang on, but isn't that stupid? and then there were things like when somebody shows the kid a phone, those are things that you're like, oh yeah, that would happen. That is, yeah. But hey, okay, so I'll give it a 3.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think we better move on.
Yeah, we better move on because we have stuff to get to. Okay, so moving on to stuff, and we're going to have, even though 2 of us are going to talk about this, we're going to have 5 minutes because 28 days late, yes, it's taking everything else. We're going to talk the last anniversary. So, Holly, can you quickly tell us what this is about before we rip into it?
Yeah, very brief summary. It is set upon an island where many moons ago 2 sisters had found a baby who appeared to have been abandoned in its home by its parents, her parents, as it turns out. and on the island that they live, they do
Scribbly Gum Island, we will say. It's called
Thank
Scribbly
you,
Gum
yes.
Island. This is definitely, obviously, in Australia.
It is. They do an annual anniversary finding of the baby. One of the women, as it begins, one of the women has died of natural causes and old age, and she has somewhat surprisingly left her house on the island to her grandson's
Ex-girlfriend.
Yes, it's her grandson's ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
And the premise from there on is the relationship between the family and the woman who has inherited the house. The backstory mystery of what happened to the baby's parents, and how and who everybody is, and how they've got to the point in life that they have.
Yeah.
It is by the woman who wrote Big Little Lies,
Liane Moriarty.
Thank you. And yeah, it's set in Australia. It's an excellent cast.
Yeah, I think it's based on the book. As she wrote a book. She wrote a book and they turned this into a TV show. And yeah, excellent cast. Theresa Palmer, Daniel McDonald. Yeah. I love Daniel McDonald. Miranda Richardson. Doing a very kind of like, lived in Australian accent, which I'm kind of like, I was like, it made me think, has she lived in Australia? Does she live in Australia? Because it was very kind of, it wasn't like, someone go, oh, g'day, mate. It wasn't one of those. It was very, very subtle and very kind of like, you could just believe that this woman has lived on this island for, I don't know, 70 years or something like that. So, yes. And I think I sent a message to you saying that it took me ages to finish watching this, and I was stuck 2 episodes from the end because every character in this is stupid. and I stick by
There is a theme in this episode. They have a lot of stupid people.
No.
We watch.
I mean, it's one of these things where I looked at it and it's kind of like you just go like remember Where Did You Go, Bernadette? That was a film that you reviewed a while back, and it was based on a book. And after watching the film, I went to read the book and I realized that they cut stuff out of the book and they changed things to make it more palatable for film. And I just keep getting the feeling that if this book was worthy of being adapted, they must have changed some stuff. They must have removed things because I think it's too long. It's 6 episodes. 6 episodes is too long. There is not enough story to fill 6 episodes of this thing. I figured out what the big mystery was by episode 3. I mean, it's kind of, for me, it's kind of telegraphed about the parenthood of, essentially, this is a whole one big family. They all live on the island. This person has been left this house, and it's all kind of blah 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 going on. There's half the stuff half of the stuff that happens in this show I think does not matter. Doesn't actually have any impact on proceedings in the end. And it's like, oh yeah, does the grandson still have a flame for his ex? Guess what? Guess what? Because it's such a small world, it just so happens that she happens to have had a dalliance in Thailand with the husband of somebody else who lives on the island, but years ago when they were kids. Oh yeah, guess what? And it's just kind of like, at the end, I'm just kind of like, I don't care. I don't care. And by the time they start doing all the reveals and going, ooh, guess who? Look who's this? Look who's that? I'm like, I don't care. I really don't care. Just finish so I can review you on the podcast and I can tell Holly I've fulfilled all righteousness and I watched this damn thing. Well, sorry, Holly, you.
I agree with all of that, though I enjoyed watching it, even though the characters are all incredibly irritating.
Oh, sorry.
All of them. Really annoying people.
Nothing to redeem anybody in this thing.
No. Everyone is a walking bundle of character flaws. Though maybe that's no bad thing because most of us are.
It's the melodrama though that I don't like. It's just so melodramatic.
It's almost a little bit soap opera-esque.
It is 100% that.
So, and I enjoyed watching it, and I binged it over about 2 days. But I think I needed to binge it over about 2 days because if I tried to drag it out for any longer than that, I'd probably have forgotten to go back to it. Mm-hmm. But I enjoyed it. It was nonsense, but there's nothing wrong with nonsense. It has its place.
It has its place, and that is not in my watch list. So how many stars? How many stars would you give it?
I will give it a 3.
Okay, cool. I unfortunately would give it a 2 because. Yeah, I would give it a 2 because I just thought dumb, so dumb, and
which is correct. I mean, they are very dumb.
Okay, I'm going to stop. And go on to, let's talk about F1, the movie. Shaun, tell us what this is about.
Okay, well, there's not really a lot to say story-wise because there's not a huge amount of story to it.
I feel like the title of this film is the plot.
It is the plot.
Broadly speaking, yes.
So, and I'm just going to say one thing now before anything else, that Brad Pitt, I don't care what anyone says, has got to be Robert Redford's son.
You say this every time we talk about Brad Pitt.
Every time I talk about Brad Pitt, and I love him, and I think he's great, and he's good in this. So basically, the story, quick story, he's a driver that did have a chance of going somewhere, had a bit of an accident, sort of, and then became a bit of a drifter, lives in a camper van, goes and does all these different events like, you know, Daytona and stuff. And then he gets called, his mate comes up from way back and says, look, I want you to drive Formula One because my company's not doing so well. And of course, in the company, one of the drivers, he's a young, up-and-coming, shall we say, Willie Beaumont from Any Given Sunday type of thing. This really, really reminded me of Any Given Sunday so much.
Well, I think, okay, without watching this film, I feel like this film is going to follow the sports movie playbook. To the sports movie crowd pleasing playbook to the numbers. So it's played by Damson Idris. He's black. He's probably the only black driver in there. He's British.
He is not the only black driver in there because it has real drivers in it.
Oh, so Lewis Hamilton shows up.
There is a lot of cameos.
Yes.
I've seen the poster and I saw Max Verstappen, but I didn't see Lewis Hamilton, so I wasn't sure if there was going to be that.
And Lewis Hamilton's dog,
Rocco,
has his own line in the credits.
I'll say this really quick and then I'll let Holly get on. So to me, right, I've never ever been a fan of racing car movies. Yeah, I've never been. I don't get Formula One. It's something that's never really been on my radar. I mean, I like sports, but the driving sports, I'm not so keen on. But I really got into this one. I think it reminded me of, I did see a film years ago called Le Mans with Steve McQueen. And I watched a James Garner film called Grand Prix.
Oh, yeah?
What was the one, the Hemson one with about James Hunt?
Oh, yeah, that's Rush.
Rush.
I thought that was quite good.
Yeah, so, but so they had the split screen a couple of times, not so much. And there was a few nods. There was a few nods to but yeah, I mean, it was exciting. I was excited, man. I was those racing. I was like, I can't believe this. And Holly seeing it in IMAX. It must have been out of this world.
It was spectacular. So good in the IMAX. I mean, just the cinema buddy Steph and I went as per usual, and she's a big F1 fan. So it was automatically right at the top of her list, and to see it in IMAX as well. It was superb. I was expecting to find nail marks in my hands at the end of it because it was so tense, and just the feeling of the movement and. Yeah, but
for me, it really picked up on how technical Formula One is. And the bit like with this, it goes, why isn't he leaving the pits? Why isn't he leaving the pits? Why isn't he leaving the pits? And then you suddenly realise the reason why he's waited to come out of the pits so it can help someone else. But
it's way more than just driving
with
fast.
The tyres. Yeah, it's way more than much driving. They say we need a tenth off of you. We need a tenth of a second off you. And it is a really fast-paced action film. And as I say, I loved Any Given Sunday, and it really, really reminded me. It went along these lines that even if you're not a Formula One fan or a racing car fan, this captured you enough. Yeah, so.
All right.
What was the film? Christian Bale? That was another racing car film. Sorry, I was just.
That was Ford versus Ferrari.
Yes.
It was called Le Mans 66, depending on what country you were in.
I think he was. I think he was
also loved
dude with the dog. They actually trained Brad Pitt for a little while into the Silverstone circuit. So.
Lewis Hamilton.
Lewis Hamilton, yeah. So, and I mean, there are, much the same as in Any Given Sunday or some of these other ones, there were cameos by, I mean, I don't know, I've got no idea who these Formula One people would be, but you obviously know because they're not professional actors, they're obviously, and they come up and like tap them on the shoulders and say, well done.
So wait, you're watching the film where you're like, okay, that guy has a close-up. He's a terrible actor. Must be a Formula One driver.
You've got it. Yeah, you've got it. Totally.
It's like, why are they giving him so much screen time? Oh, Formula One driver, terrible actor.
Yeah, or owners or whatever, you know. So yeah. I mean, but it's definitely all there. But yeah, no, this was a surprising watch.
It's a bit like when they did Ted Lasso, when Pep Guardiola showed up in Ted Lasso, and you're like, if you didn't know anything about football, you'd be like, who the hell is this guy? He can't act.
It's like he is here for a reason.
Yeah,
It's
but
like,
if you're not into those sports, it is. I think I've spoken to lots of people that have actually seen. I know this is American football, and they've seen Any Given Sunday, and even though they don't like the sport, they thought the film's really, really good.
Yeah. Okay, so quick question: as an F1 fan with you, Hollywood cinema buddy Steph, did she say, okay, this actually works, or was she kind of like, oh, hang on a second, that would never happen? Because
she loved it, absolutely loved it.
Because one of the big problems is that, believe it or not, Brad Pitt is 61 years old.
Yeah, I think we suspended some elements of disbelief on that.
And there's
I'll tell you what, I'm not that way, but for a man of 60 odd, he's in pretty good shape.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
The other driver's mum says, oh, he's not that old.
Yeah, I agree with you on that with Brad, but it's like the idea that a 61-year-old driving an F1 car is a little bit.
It is preposterous.
It is.
Yeah, but it didn't really matter. The story was I think the story
especially if and don't tell anyone, but especially if this follows the sort of like sports film playbook to the letter and they end up winning, because
couldn't possibly comment
especially
on
if they end up winning. I mean, that's feel good but totally unrealistic, because
they normally win or die, don't they? It's one of those things.
We do the things from the playbook.
I'm going to say again, don't you think Brad Pitt is Robert Redford?
This is the hill that Shaun will die on. Brad Pitt is Robert Redford's son. All right. Okay, cool. So, how many stars would you give F1, the movie?
Well, this was a mighty surprise for me. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I went in I think about 4:30, came in about 7:30. It did not seem that the film was that long, so it was going to get 4 from me for this one.
I actually enjoyed it so much, so I'm going to give it a 5. It brought me such. Is it a 5-worthy script? Probably not. Is it 5-worthy for everything else it does? Yes. It is a joyous bit of cinematography.
You know, I in my head, and if this is okay with you, Holly, I am going to couch that. I'm going to sort of like slightly adapt that and say it is I think a 5-star watching experience, but possibly not a 5-star film.
Yes. Yes, I think that's exactly it. It is a 5-star watching experience, and I will very happily watch it again.
Yeah, but just one more thing I want to say about that is directed by Joseph Kosinski, who directed Top Gun Maverick. So essentially, this guy knows how to put a thrilling sequence together, because his track record now is becoming impossible to ignore. All right, cool. Yeah. Now let's go
very
over
fast things.
Very fast
thrilling
things.
Thrilling sequence of very fast things.
Yes, with aging action stars who should know better. And now, Sharon, we're going to go to France. We're going to go to France, and we're going to go to you with the family pack and whatever it's called in actual French. Tell us what this is about, please.
Loup-Garous, but I'm not sure what the pronunciation is. Basically, this is a French Jumanji. This is a family who living in this rural town. They find this board game, but there's a bit of like info at the beginning saying how this man wearing a wolfskin coat posted these little wooden tokens through different villagers' doors, and they became werewolves. And after dark, they sort of ravaged this village. And then jump forward 400 years, and a family are in this cottage. They want to have a bit of together time, so they start playing this board game, and they each get dealt a ticket. Then the world shudders, and they go back in time to the village as it was 400 years ago. And then they have to try to work out who the werewolves are, so that if when the game is played and when the werewolves are revealed, they can go back to their own time. So it's like Jumanji meets Time Slip, or whatever that Michael Crichton one was called.
Oh, yeah.
It's obviously in French. So a lot of the game, I think a lot of the humour, because it was built as a comedy, I think a lot of the humour is you hear them making like word jokes, words that rhyme or sound very similar, and obviously it doesn't work in translation. There's one scene where they're talking about le bébé and le bête, and they're like le bête bébé, and they're like going back and forth with the same words. I'm thinking this is probably really funny in French, but to me, I'm watching it going, yeah, she's a baby, and she's now a werewolf. She's a baby and she's a beast. And I'm like, what am I not hearing about this? So it's a family film, so obviously the werewolves look, the baby werewolf looks like a teddy bear, and the older werewolves, some of them just zip themselves into their costume. So it's very broad, shall we say. So if you like broad French play on words humour with a little hint of Jumanji thrown in, the first Jumanji, I mean, then with sort of very clean looking French peasants in a very clean looking rural French town, then I'm sure you might have a great time. I found it a little bit, I don't know why I'm watching this, but I've got to review something this week, so I'll stick it out again. It was entertaining in a please don't think about it sort of way. So I would give it a 2.
Okay, 2
and
for...
so if you want to practice your French, by turning off your subtitles, you probably would get more out of it by doing that.
Oh, all right, cool. And figuring out the French wordplay. Because you were talking about that, it sounds like there's a game that is sometimes called Werewolves, it's sometimes called Mafia. Whenever I played it's called Mafia.
It's called Werewolves, yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's like a film version of that.
I think it is based on a game, yeah. Whether it's I don't know whether it's a board game or whether it is a computer game, I don't really know.
The game is usually just kind of like, it's like a campfire game. It's a campfire game, like, where you have to sort of figure out who the werewolf is before the sun rises, and then like
that sort of game,
yeah. That, and it's what I'm convinced that the TV show The Traitors on BBC is based on this game, even though I've never actually watched The Traitors. So 2 stars for the family pack. All right, thank you for that. You saved us 2 minutes, and let's move on. And we are going to go back to cinema, and we are going to talk Elio. Elio, this is the latest Pixar movie, and this is so the idea about this is that at the beginning of the film you meet Elio, and Elio is, because this is now a Disney movie, he's an orphan. Of course he's an orphan.
It's traditional. It is
traditional. I mean, Jason Manford actually does this thing about how there must be like a really evil person sitting at the top of Disney, that whenever they bring a story to them, he just goes, kill the dad. His only note is, kill the mum, kill them both. And this sort of follows that tradition. So Elio's an orphan. He's been looked after by his aunt. His aunt is in the military. She is they keep mentioning the fact that she wants to go into the astronaut program, but because she now has to look after her nephew, she can't go into the astronaut program. But she takes him along to a museum once, and he hears Carl Sagan talking about the cosmos and about the Voyager probe that was sent out in 1977, and he is hooked. And then from that point on, everything about him is about space. He's like, I want to go to space. I want aliens to come and abduct me. He spends his days on a beach with aliens, I'm here, come pick me up, written around him, so that like almost like a sort of bull's eye, so the aliens can just come and pick him up. And that's what he does. He goes into his ham radio. He's just trying to find aliens, and people are telling him, look, there's no aliens, don't worry about this. And obviously, if there were no aliens, this would be a really short film, because there's a point at which there's like a tractor beam comes and picks up the Voyager probe, and then through a series of hilarious shenanigans, because this is a kids movie, it turns out that they are aliens. They take him up into this absolutely beautifully designed thing called the Communiverse, where they think he is the leader of Earth. They think he's the leader of Earth, and he's like, oh, cool, yeah, I'm here. I'm finally where I belong. I'm with these people who actually get me. I'm with the aliens. But then something comes up that means that he might not be able to stay there, because another alien race is trying to attack the Communiverse because they haven't been allowed in. So he ends up being like a sort of essentially shenanigans ensure the whole thing becomes Elio's trying to do whatever he can do to remain in the Communiverse. And it becomes a buddy movie because he has him and another absolutely adorable slug alien called Glorgon. And then it becomes a buddy movie of them going stuff and doing things and everything like that. It has the usual sort of Pixar invention in it. There are sequences in this that I say are beautifully rendered. There's one particular one that has to do with space debris, where it's almost kind of like they're making a point about how much debris humans have just put up in space and just left there. But there's a whole sequence of space debris that they do something, and you know how Shaun has his whole thing about Brad Pitt being Robert Redford's son. I have my whole thing about representation of different countries, especially African ones. And there's a bit with this space debris thing where they come in, and then the first voice you hear is of somebody from Senegal. And I'm like, yes, well done, Pixar, representation. And one thing I would say, and I feel like this Pixar movies have become more personal as they've gone along. So you had your Toy Story and your Monsters Inc. and everything like that all revolved around one particular idea. Like, what happens if toys actually come to life when you leave the room? What if the monsters in your cupboard really are real? And extrapolated from that. As they've gone later, they've become a bit more personal. Like, Turning Red was a lot about Domishi's life and all that. And I feel like sometimes with the more personal stories in Pixar, they forget about the central crackerjack idea. And so there's bits of this that are actually really, really, they're really, really touching when they're talking about space. And when you hear Carl Sagan's voice going on and everything about that, about what do we know about the cosmos and what's up there. And you think, oh, wow, this is actually good. And they're reaching at something. But the rest of it is kind of like they didn't quite give the same care to the story. It's kind of like, it's like, for me, one of my least favorite Pixar movies is The Good Dinosaur, that had this idea. And the original idea was, what happens if the asteroid that hit the Earth and wiped out the dinosaurs missed? And that, I'm like, okay, that's interesting, but then the rest of the film does nothing with that idea. And I feel like there's elements of that in this where I really enjoyed it. There's bits of it. It's not top tier Pixar, but I do think it's a good film. But I can only give it a 3 out of 5. I think the bits with the space exploration are good. There's a bit where, Shaun, you're a bit into the space program, right?
Yeah.
There is one particular scene where, to do with the space debris, where something comes at them, and the way it's rendered and the idea that this thing is just out there, I was like, I think Shaun would like this.
Ooh, right.
I think Shaun would like, if nothing else, this 15 seconds of this film. Shaun,
the idea sounds good. The idea
is quite good, and I like the way it's done. And there's some funny bits, and like it ends up being a lot about family and belonging and parenthood and all that kind of stuff. But I would give it a 3 out of 5 for Elio. Yeah, it's like not Pixar's best, but not Pixar's worst, because that would be The Good Dinosaur. So let's go. And now let's go back to streaming stuff, and let's talk Brimstone. So
Brimstone, you want to talk Brimstone? Yeah, we could have talked the other one, because I probably could have summed that up in about 2 minutes and saved Brimstone, because there's a lot more to say about Brimstone than there is about Swedish Bloodbath.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Tell us about Brimstone, and they can tell us a little bit about Swedish Bloodbath at the end.
Okay, right. Okay, so Brimstone.
It is 1 minute to 6.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's okay. Like my family's Nigerian. They're never on time. So...
Yeah. As I say, is it to 6 or 7? Oh, is it 6 o'clock?
It's 6 o'clock now. Yeah.
Oh right, I was thinking it was 7. I don't know why I'm an hour ahead. So now I can relax. We're an hour ahead.
You can relax. I have some family that might be waiting for me.
Okay.
All right.
So Brimstone. So this is a Western. I didn't catch the Western when it came out. It's from 2016. It stars Guy Pearce, the Aussie dude, and he plays this rather nasty. It's quite.
And it's got Kit Harington in it.
It has, yes. Have you seen it?
Yes, I've seen it.
Have you? Did you ever?
And
we haven't reviewed this.
Fanning. Is it Elle Fanning?
Ellie Fanning, yeah, she's
Fanning, yeah.
This is the one with the preacher in the. It's quite. Have you seen it? Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
that's good. You can help me out here then. Brilliant. So basically, it's this preacher. He's the stepfather of one of the like this girl, and he's not particularly nice, is he, Sharon? In fact, he's a really, really nasty character. I don't even know Guy Pearce how he could sleep at night after playing somebody like this. so it's a bit over the there's 3 it's done like, what is it? It's Revelation, Exodus, and Genesis, and it's in 4 acts, and the last one's Retribution. The other 2 are books of the Gospels, I think, or whatever.
Well, books in the Bible.
Books in the Bible. Okay, go.
Books in the Bible. Yeah. Sorry, I'll get confused. What's what? So yeah. So it's basically a story of she manages to escape, and she gets someone else. Cuts out her tongue so she can't speak. She learns a sign language. Yeah, I know. So I don't know how far I want to go, because it is quite brutal and quite messed up. Perhaps you could help me out a little bit more with the story, Sharon. So
it's been a couple of years since I've seen it, but I don't think it's actually told in sequence, isn't it? You get these revelations, what you think you understand and what you think these characters are. As the film progresses and you move into each of these acts, you get a different revelation, and it basically turns around what you thought you knew. And so every time you get to another point, you think you understood this character, and then there's something else is revealed, and you go, well, actually, that completely reframes what you saw in the previous bit.
It does. But what I liked about this is, like you say, the Kit Harington one in the barn, where you think, oh, it's going to be. To me, a lot of stuff in this is stuff that could happen. I think it's not.
Yeah.
And like with the, when he turns up, and because he's pretty nasty and he can handle himself, and he gets himself in situations where you think, oh, good, he's going to get his comeuppance, but he manages to, for whatever. I really liked that. I thought that to me, that gave it the sense of reality, if you will, the sense of So yeah, did you feel the same on that one, Sharon? But it is.
Yes, I remember watching it, and I didn't find it a particularly satisfying watch, because you get to the end and you're going, it leaves you feeling a bit like, oh, I don't know quite what I was supposed to feel at the end of that. But some of the characters, you're thinking, yeah, you are not the character I thought you were, and so your journey is the arc is not it isn't quite what you're anticipating, and so they turned some of the Western conventions around, which I thought was interesting ideas. I liked the visuals of it. I liked the color palette. I liked the way they looked. I liked the way it felt grounded, and that the things that people could do, they weren't superhuman, that you think how people die, and it's not because of anything heroic or anything. It's because you took one step to the left instead of one step to the right. It was just that sort of happenstance that you died. And where some characters in Westerns are bulletproof, aren't they? They can do anything, and you know that bullet is going to be like, oh, miss me, and it goes, oh, miss me again. And in this, it was like even the good guys could die.
Right, yeah. I think that's what I liked about it. To me, it gave it that, like you say, the cinematography, the feel of it, the whole feel of the film felt like, yes, this could be, this could happen, and it wasn't.
Very similar in some ways to this American Primeval we saw, because it takes you down to like this sort of really grubby, sweaty level, where bad things can happen to good people, and bad people don't always get their comeuppance.
Yeah.
Well, I think that seems to be the what happens with more modern westerns. More modern westerns they're a lot less about the hero worship, and
I think they call them revisionists. Okay. So Holly has to go. So Holly, just say goodbye. Bye, Holly.
See you later, Holly. Say hi to mom and dad. Okay, cool. So with that being said, how many stars would you give Brimstone?
This is a difficult one, because it had quite a lot, and I am tempted to. I don't know. I'm just going to give it a 3. I'm going to say I think it's a worthy 3. This one.
Yeah, okay. I would go with the 3, because bearing in mind I saw it a long time ago. I think I probably saw it quite close to when it came out. Yeah. So, but I still remember it, which is a good thing, because a number of films I've seen, you asked me to review them. Like if you asked me to review The Family Pack next week, I'd probably struggle to tell you what it was about. But this I saw probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I can still remember most of the things.
It does. It's something you're not going to forget, I think.
Yeah, I would certainly give it a 3. I would give it a 3, because it's a good film. But the watching experience, enjoyment of it, I would say it was definitely a 3 in terms of that.
Yeah. And by the way, it's Dakota Fanning in the film.
Dakota, isn't it? It's
Dakota Fanning. Yeah, the older Fanning. All right, cool. And so, with that being said, quickly, who do you think has won this week? Before we go on to the cinema. Yes, I think it's a whole star. It's a whole star ahead. Yeah. Cinema's got in there. I think my experience of the last anniversary and the family pack for Sharon kind of did it. All right, cool. So you want to talk about the Swedish Stockholm?
I can if you want. Yeah, I can tell you about this fairly quickly, and it's basically takes place around about the 500s, and it's the Danes are trying to conquer the Swedes, and they butcher them. They're sort of killing loads of people, and then at the end, I think it must be based on some
actual historical thing.
Yeah, I think it's based on probably on something. But let's just put it this way: lot of bludgeoning, a lot of gratuitous stabbings, and lots of blood flying about. And basically, it's a revenge movie. So there's this big killing. The whole family's wiped out. One of the girls survives. She teams up with another girl, and they basically go chasing for all the nasty people. That bit like Game of Thronesy.
Yeah. So, it looks from the poster behind it looks like that's Clash Bang at the top of it, playing yet another absolute boss. Like,
yeah.
Boss, like, he's so good at playing them. I mean,
He is. So basically, let's just say it's a bit, little bit Game of Thronesy cross with the who's the London guy who directs Lock, Stock and
Guy Ritchie.
Guy Ritchie.
Guy
Yeah, so
Ritchie.
it's basically because it's done sort of. There's a lot of it tongue in cheek when he says, "Oh yeah, well obviously I'm this, that, and the other." And I mean, it's English language, but
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
just,
right.
it's just
Is
like
he a geezer? It's not a geezer, is he? It's Swedish.
well, they're sort of. That's just the way they talk. You know, it's just like done trying to be comic but serious. I don't know how to explain it. You know, like
I know what you mean. It's like it's kind of like, because Guy Ritchie is a bit he sort of made it his own, but in a way he's kind of almost sub Tarantino.
Yes,
it's like where it's bloody, it's out there, it's all the buzz. At the same time, it's all a bit kind of like nudge, nudge, wink, wink, sign no more, kind of thing. Where it's terrible things are happening, but they're supposed to be funny.
Yeah, so not so good, I'm afraid. I mean, I've seen all those action sequences before anyway, so you know all the battle sequences, and you see them in most things. So it's pretty standard fare. So I would give this like 2, I think. For me,
yeah, I think.
It was one of those ones that I was like, oh yeah, see, yeah, okay. It wasn't like wow, you know.
I'll tell you, it's got a good poster though.
It has got a good poster.
the woman at the front, I thought that was Chloe Sevigny. She looks so much like Chloe Sevigny, but it isn't. It's apparently a woman called Alba August. But Clash Bank. I mean, his agent will just have like a website that says Clash Bank, dick for hire or something like that. Actually, no, maybe we shouldn't use that word. But but absolutely, because if you've ever seen Bad Sisters on Apple TV Plus, he plays the worst character in the world in that. He is so good. He's so good at being terrible, at being a character you just want to boo, hiss, and like see bad things happen to. But anyway, until next week, and God knows when we'll be seeing. It is a goodbye from me.
Yep, it's a goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from me.
Thank you so much for joining us.